Candlewick on Brilliance Audio presents Blue Window by Adina Rishe Gewirtz, performed by Emily Sutton-Smith and Luke Daniels. On the day before it all began, Susan found herself wishing mightily that she could melt into light gray paint, which by no coincidence was the color of Ms. Clives's classroom wall. Lucy Driscoll was making a scene, and Susan stood at the center of it.
"But, Miss Clives, you promised,"
Lucy sobbed. "Don't you remember? You said I could be Juliet." Criminations, Susan thought. Exactly what I deserve for opening my mouth. She stared out the window at the December sky, where the clouds had swallowed the sun. It winked feebly from beneath a smear of gray, looking half suffocated, which was exactly how Susan felt, trapped up there in front of everyone as Lucy moved from sobs to conniptions. 5 full minutes of it left Miss Clives looking fatigued. She turned a pained and apologetic face to Susan. "Susan, you don't mind, do you? And you can have a turn next time." Susan had only been waiting to get a word in edgewise anyway. Her cheeks were on fire, and she thought she'd combust if she had to stand near Lucy for another second. "Oh, of course not. That's okay." She darted to her seat, thinking that wild horses couldn't drag her back to the front of that room for another tryout. It was a phrase of her grandmother's she particularly liked. Wild horses and an 800-pound gorilla seemed to be the two things that could drag a person anywhere, at least according to Grandma. Susan was certain she could withstand both of them more easily than further drama from Lucy, along with the humiliating, gossipy glee the rest of the class took in watching the whole thing. Unfortunately, thanks to Max, the scene wasn't over. The entire time Susan had been at the front of the room, her twin brother had been mouthing, "Stand up for yourself, say something," and she'd answered with the tiniest shake of her head. Now that she'd taken her seat, he began lecturing her in a low, insistent whisper. "You could at least say you worked for it. You don't have to act like you don't care. It's not just about you anyway, it's about what's fair." She turned and shot him a look hot enough to singe his eyebrows. Apparently, he was flame-proof. "I don't want to talk about it," she hissed. "So stop already." Flame-proof and deaf. Max leaned forward, gripping the edges of his desk. "How long did you practice? All this week, remember? Lucy doesn't know the first thing about—" "Max, do you have something to share with the class?" It was Miss Clives, glowering from the front of the room, tapping a purple manicured nail on her desk. Miss Clives had started the year as one of those aggressively cheerful, pretty teachers the class tended to love, the kind that arranged the desks, including her own, into a circle so everyone could be friends, the kind that made Susan nervous, because in her experience, the Miss Cliveses of the world generally lost their patience by about December. By winter break, all the cheerful good humor would have drained away, replaced by the temperament and patience of Godzilla. The worst of it would be the whiny, peeved reminders of the good old days back in September, when the kids had supposedly known how to behave. Lucy Driscoll had moved the teacher perilously close to that point now, in Susan's estimation, and the look on Miss Clives's face said it would be Max who pushed her over. Max did not see the warning in the teacher's stiff posture and tapping fingers. He just shrugged and repeated what he'd said, along with a few other things of interest, while Susan withered in her seat, and Lucy gulped air and shuddered. Susan sometimes thought that she and Max must be about the two least alike people in the world, especially for a set of twins. Make that the universe, since that was the scale on which Max tended to put things. He liked to argue over principles like justice and rights and progress. Max's principles were always introduced in capital letters. At home, Susan argued right back. But despite the fact that her favorite books were all about spunky, outspoken girls who played as hard as the boys did, Susan abhorred having everyone look at her. The only trouble she ever got into was for reading under her desk, and that, along with slightly exasperated notes home, if Susan only applied herself she could be a real star in school, was enough to manage. Max, on the other hand, had a habit of making a splash. He'd been doing it since they were both little, breaking things, playing too rough, having trouble sitting still. Lately his splashes had to do with being taken seriously, a difficult thing for a bulky 13-year-old with a soft face, hair that sat like a dark, rumpled mountain range on top of his head, and theories that came out of reading The Giant Book of Why.